Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Japol. I did my PhD in electrical engineering in 2017 at AUT, and I'm happy to be back here to speak to you all on the research journey, or my research journey over the last 4 years of doing my PhD. I will start off by thanking the Postgraduate Research School for having me here and thanking them for organizing this event. I always wanted to participate in the symposium. I just never thought I'd get to do it in this capacity, but I'm thankful nonetheless. When I did my PhD in 2017, I can distinctly remember what I was thinking and feeling the first few days I arrived in New Zealand. I was given a scholarship to come to do my research, and my thinking was very simple. Get my research idea, write my research papers, publish those papers, and write my thesis. Of course, I was told that your research idea had to be big and grand and novel and exciting. And I was told that for me to have a good research journey, I had to be passionate, work hard, and stay focused. I was all ready and all excited. I ran to the computer by the second day I was in New Zealand, and I started to look for a research idea that would be outstanding, Nobel Prize winning stuff. And much like every student in the room today, I ended up in a particular situation, and I think everybody can agree with me that they have faced that or are currently facing that situation. I was frustrated because I couldn't get a good research idea. I was bored out of my mind because I was at the computer all day long. I was feeling lost because I didn't know what to do, what to write. I lost a lot of sleep. I was doubting myself. And overall, when I did manage to get something, I was just not happy with it. That is something that everyone can agree that they have been through. And I didn't know it at the time, but I went through that because my approach was just bad and wrong. What I was told in the beginning, what I felt and thought in the beginning was not the best way to approach research or my research journey. In fact, that prescription that you see right in front of you, it was putting the cart before the horse. So when I met my professor, thankfully, I had a good professor, Dr. Techley. He set me straight, and he taught me some of the things that I needed to learn to improve my research result. And these things I carry with me even today after I have left AUT. The first thing that he taught me was how to get a research idea. He taught me that to get a good research idea, I have to have a very broad research topic that I'm interested in. Now, a research topic is not a research question, it's not a research idea. It's simply something that you as an individual is interested in. It has nothing to do with research necessarily. Examples of broad research topics could be climate change, energy, pointillism, if you're into art, single women in management, children in Egypt, a belt buckle, or even toilet paper. Any one of these topics is very broad, and any one of these topics can be interesting to you. A research topic, a broad research topic, can be serious or it can be ridiculous. It does not matter as long as you are interested in it. And one of the key things about all broad topics is that no one topic is more important than another. All topics should be treated equally, and they should be treated like Play-Doh. Every broad research topic has the potential to be a great research question. Depends on how you approach it. So let's take, for example, toilet paper. I love this example. After you've gotten your broad research topic, the next thing that as a researcher you should do is to grow your research environment. Now, that's something that I did not know when I first started, and it's something that my supervisor taught me. Most students believe that the research environment is the same. However, that is not true. You create your own research environment. How do you do that? Well, you need to get to know the journals that are publishing papers in your research topic, your broad research topic. You need to know organizations, companies, NGOs that are involved in your broad research topic. You need to know competitions that are surrounding your research topic. You need to know all the technologies and all the skills that you have pertaining to your research topic. That's long before you ever get a research idea itself. Where do you learn about these things? Well, you learn about them from your supervisors, your professors, from the research graduate school, from employability lab. You learn about them from news, social media, and even other universities. When you go to these sources, you find out what are the organizations and institutions associated with your research topic, and you make a list. You must, and I cannot stress that enough, you must make a list and keep that list in front of you. So for example, if I was looking at toilet paper, I know I went ahead and I researched it, and I actually did that. British Medical Journal publishes a lot of papers on toilet paper. New Zealand has a company called Purex New Zealand. They do a lot of work on toilet paper. So I would write these two down as primary sources of information for my broad research topic. The next thing I would do is to deliberately go out of my way to collaborate with people from these organizations. I would go ahead, I would call Purex New Zealand, I would call the journal for the British Medical Journal, and I would find out who's involved in my broad research topic. The reason why I would do that is to learn the limitations of the topic, find out if there are any controversies in that area, find out if there are a lack of studies in that area, or if there's just a general lack of understanding of something in that area. In doing that, it gives me a sense of what's going on in the area and gives me a sense of what the direction is in general in the field. And I would also find out if there are any resources available. Perhaps there may be companies wanting to do research and wanting to fund research, and there may not be anybody available to actually do the research. So I'd find out if there are resources available. Most students do not do that. That's why a lot of PhD students and a lot of master students complain that they often feel alone in their research journey. You hear that complaint all the time. But one thing that my professor taught me was that you need to deliberately go out of your way to surround yourself with the right people in your broad research field. And this is long before you actually get a research idea. Okay. So for example, when I was discussing toilet paper with a friend, they told me that one of the things they wouldn't mind seeing is toilet paper that changes color when exposed to a particular disease type, when exposed to feces that have from a person with a particular disease. So I wrote that down. The next thing that you need to do after you get a general idea of what's going on is to write out a research idea based on what's going on in the field and based on your collaboration with people. In doing that, you can actually develop a research idea that is relevant to the field and relevant to the people in the field. So your research idea itself starts to take shape around what's going on in the field, and it doesn't just take shape in your head, as most students do. They sit at the computer, they rush to get a research idea, and the research idea is only taking shape in their head. It has nothing to do with people around them. That is how I was, and that is a bad approach. So, for example, after I approached the organizations who asked about toilet paper, after I collaborated with some people on toilet paper, I came up with an idea. Implement color-changing toilet paper for the detection of COVID-19. That idea itself didn't come from me, it came from listening to people. So I can be sure that the idea is a very relevant one. And being relevant, it would be useful and interesting, not just to me, but to everybody that I spoke to and to the wider research environment that I am now engaging with. In doing that, once you have your research idea, you begin to plan. And you must involve your supervisor in your planning, because your supervisor now, seeing your research idea, can give you direction into how to go about exploring that idea. Now, if you notice on the slide, I have first research idea, meaning that the research idea that I just came up with is not my last. It's an initial idea. Perhaps when you involve your supervisor may say you may not have enough time to do that idea, and your supervisor may work with you to refine it into something a little better. Whatever the case may be, you sit with your supervisor and you plan out how you're going to approach your particular idea. Make sure that you have very clear micro goals. Micro goals are not goals that you do in the long term, it's goals that you do within a few weeks, maybe 2 weeks to a month. Also, you must ensure that in your planning, you plan beyond your research degree. Perhaps the question may be so interesting that it may span more than one degree. Maybe you're a master's student, that question can carry on you to your PhD. Maybe you're a PhD student, that question can carry on beyond your PhD. Whatever your planning is, also ensure that you keep a journal. So you must write your research question or your research idea down. You must write all the journals and all the people that you've met. You actually need to write the people that you've met and spoken to. And once you keep that journal, you have your plan with your professor, you start practicing. Now, practice here means that you start developing an experiment to test your idea, or you start developing a methodology to test your idea. These are things that I, as a research student, when I was doing my PhD, did not know. So in my first year, I found myself struggling to just get this down on paper, just a simple idea. And I wasted, I would say, the first 9 months of my PhD unnecessarily. However, if you follow the pattern here, you would actually get a research idea within 1 or 2 months, maximum. When you start writing your methodology and you start experimenting, start noting your results. Your results can be pure rubbish, but note the results and store it. This was a piece of advice that was given to me by the head of the engineering school. And I have kept this advice with me till today. My first research paper I ever wrote, I still have it with me today. and it's pure rubbish. It's not good at all, but I keep it and I go through it to remind myself of things that I should not do when I write. Sometimes I forget. Once you have your writing down, it may not be good. You bring it to your supervisor and you revise it with your supervisor until it becomes something worth publishing. By the time it becomes something worth publishing, you would already know what journal to publish in if you were following step 2. Once you have engaged in planning and practicing, one of the things that you must really bear in mind, and this is something that all research students agree with, particularly seasoned PhD students, as well as professors who supervise PhD students, you must absolutely take care of yourself. One of the things that I realized after I published my first paper is that every time you publish a paper, you get a high, sort of like a drug addict. And that high causes you to want to research even more. And sometimes in the process of researching, you neglect yourself. And so in the process of neglecting yourself, you end up in trouble. Your health ends up in trouble. As a very good example, and this is one of the saddest situations that happened in my life or with my friends, and I've always kept that with me. I had a friend that I met in her final year of doing a PhD. She spent almost the entire year in the library writing her thesis. And I, of course, met her in the library. I also spent quite a lot of time in the library, and so we got to know each other very well. She never left her desk. I would come into the library in the morning, I would leave in the afternoon. Sometimes I would come back in the evening, and she would still be at her desk, working really hard. She finally finished her thesis, and her thesis came up to 267 pages. I would never forget that. The book was really heavy when I held it. And she said she only stopped because her professor told her it was enough, else she would continue writing. She went ahead and she did her oral exam and she passed with flying colors. And in my final year of my PhD, I met her once again on campus. And by that time, I was ready to leave New Zealand. It was my last week in New Zealand. And we decided to have some lunch together. Of course, we couldn't go to any restaurant because this was around COVID time, so we had some lunch in a park. And I asked her what did she plan to do now that she has finished the PhD. She told me that she plans to go to South Island and get married and settle down there and start her career, because this was something that she did not get a chance to do because the PhD being 4 years long, it held her back. And I told her I was really happy for her. It sounds like she had everything together. And this was the last time I spoke to her. I left New Zealand, and about 6.5 months later, I checked my WhatsApp and I saw a mutual friend of ours posting a picture of her saying that she's sad that she's passed away. And I said, no, that's not possible. It's only been 6.5 months and she just finished her PhD. She could not have passed away. So I text my friend to ask her, well, what happened? Is this a joke or something? And my friend told me no. After I left, she started to complain about feeling sick, but nobody took it seriously. She didn't take it seriously. Just one day, they asked her to go to the hospital, and she went in, and the doctor told her she had stage 4 cancer, and she only had 4 months to live. In that same week that she was given the news, she passed away. This was 6.5 months after I left New Zealand. And it was a really, really sad situation because I said that she spent 4 years doing a PhD and she never got an opportunity to enjoy her life. So I tell you this to tell you that whilst you're working on your research, to make sure to live your whole life, your research and your research journey should never take the center of your life. It should always be next to everything else that you are doing. It is important, but remember to live your entire life. Remember also to be active. Tendency for a lot of students is to be seated for the entire day, looking on the computer, trying to find things for their research. Actually, there is a study out now saying that sitting is the new smoking. They found that sitting for long periods of time has the same effect on the body as smoking. So as much as you can be active. For me, I told some students that whilst I was doing my PhD, and I still do this today, I don't spend more than 4 hours a day seated at a desk for anything. I'm always up and about moving. And it keeps your mind fresh and it keeps you healthy so that you can approach your work in a positive way. Things not to do during your research journey: avoid what I call the comparison curse. A lot of students tend to compare themselves to each other. This person has published 5 papers and I've only published 1. What's wrong with me? I need to publish more. Or this person has gotten an award for publishing 10 papers and I've not even started. That sort of comparison does not build relationship. In fact, it destroys it. And that sort of comparison only leads to frustration. You must remember your research journey is your own, and it's different to someone else's, and so it must never be compared. It is what you make it. Avoid perfectionist delusion. Some students believe that they must be perfect in their research. They must write a perfect research paper. They must have a perfect idea. They must have a perfect professor. That delusion will only end you in frustration and stress. The best researchers in the world that I've met, and I've met some famous researchers, I must tell you, after I left New Zealand. The best researchers I've met are the ones who always make mistakes. They are never perfect, and they enjoy making mistakes. And I appreciate and understand that. Perfection only comes after months and even years of revision of work. It does not come overnight. So the idea that you must be perfect when you just start is crazy. So avoid it. And always stay away from bad habits. Bad habits, for example, lack of self-discipline. As a researcher, you must always be very disciplined. Your day must be uniform. You get up at a certain time, you do work by a certain time, you meet your friends by a certain time, you enjoy your life by a certain time, you go to bed by a certain time. And that monotony actually creates self-discipline and gives you a focus for doing your research. Once you practice these 5 things and you keep practicing these 5 things, what happens is that you develop a cycle. So you get your research idea, you look into your environment, you collaborate with people, you plan, you practice self-care. You do that again. After you get your research idea, you examine it, you refine it with your professor and your friends. You refine your research environment, you get to know more, you get to know more people. You plan some more, you do some more self-care. And you keep going like this in cycles. And what eventually happens, and this is only something I realized at the end of my PhD, is that all those things they tell you, you naturally develop it and it naturally or organically grows. Your research idea becomes feasible, it becomes interesting, it becomes novel, it becomes ethical and relevant because it's tied into the people that you meet, it's tied into your research environment. Your research environment itself, you begin to understand everything going on in your research environment. It's called feeling the pulse of the environment. With people, you become more collaborative and you begin to understand what people want, and you begin to shape your research around what people want. And it actually gets exciting because you begin to be able to communicate with people better. And not only that, but your planning stays up to date and you're not frustrated about falling behind because you are always planning. And you're always planning based on what's currently happening. So you would never fall short. And with your self-care, you stay healthy and you actually stay passionate about what you do. You stay focused on what's happening and you're always busy. So you have absolutely no time to be bored, no time to be frustrated, and no time to be stressed. These things I have learned in doing my PhD and continuing research after my PhD. Thank you.